Tri-City Sports Now is always full of surprises. And that's what I have for you here. Because a lot of people talking about Ronda Rousey losing on Friday, her bout. Where does this put women's combatant sports in the future? Someone who probably has an opinion on this is Christy Martin, who basically, in my opinion, invented women's combat sports. And she did it in this area about 20 years ago. I first was learning of her tale. She was a female boxer, and I first learned of her tale as a subscriber to Sports Illustrated magazine 20 years ago, and she was on the cover. The Lady is a Tramp. It was an unorthodox cover. It was creative. She was attractive on it, but still rather intimidating. And when you read in there that this was a country girl from the hills of West Virginia who was fighting out of Bristol, it was even more and so much more intriguing. So really the first star of, I think, female combatant sports is now with us, kind of by surprise. Christy Martin, I want to thank you for joining us here on Tri-City Sports Now. It is my pleasure to meet you, albeit over the phone and all this. And I guess the first question I want to ask you, though, is you invented all of this about women fighting each other. What do you think the appeal is of female combatant sports as compared to male combatant sports?
Well, I think it varies, but in my personal career, my whole thing was just about going out there, being exciting, putting on a good show, and it was just, I wanted to be accepted as a good fighter and wanted people to lose and forget that, you know, it's a female fighter. It's obvious I'm a female. But I wanted them to walk away from the fight night saying, wow, that was a good fight. Not, that was a good women's fight. That was a good fight.
Well, you started her off around here in the Tri-Cities. And at the time, I was living away from the area, but I looked at your record. I think your first 10 fights or so were out of Bristol. I'm presuming the old boxing arena that they had at BMS, which was a great place to watch a fight. I do remember that. A couple of shows, I believe, in Johnson City, this sort of thing. But what can you tell, going back to those early days here, Chrissy Martin, what are your memories of fighting out of the Tri-Cities and the crowds that you received?
Yeah, it was, it was great. Actually, you're absolutely correct. I fought at the little sports arena there on the racetrack, and it was great. I mean, great crowd acceptance. The crowd really got into the fight, and I think they were definitely women's boxing was something new at the time, and they were just impressed. I hope, excited that wow, this woman's going to knock people out. And, you know, maybe they had seen women's fights before where they kind of got in there and pushed each other. You know, it wasn't really fights, really action. And when I was able to knock people out, it was like the place would just go wild. So, you know, it was awesome. I enjoyed my time in Bristol and Johnson City. It was a learning process, and it was a building process. I was able to learn more about the business side of boxing, and then to really hone my skills on the without so many people watching, but people were still taking a look.
Yeah, I was going to ask about how many people were coming out at the time, but enough to attract the attention, obviously, of Sports Illustrated. Even recently, I know a follow-up article was done. I got through the writer from Sports Illustrated, actually, is the contact that I made to get you for this interview. But before I go a little bit on this, again, you're one of the pioneers. I want to ask you, though, over the last few years, it seems as if MMA has really taken the attention of the nation, both men's combatants and female combatants, away from traditional boxing. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think, it's something kind of new to get that much exposure. The young generation, they're all about street fights. They're all about just something different, something new. So more of their fans are the young crowd, and the boxing fans are still the boxing enthusiasts, the old timers, us old timers. We still prefer boxing. Boxing my opinion, was so much more art, so much more stand-up and skill, and now it's just not such a free-for-all. Again, I don't understand the ground game, so I can't really appreciate what they're doing. I give them prompts. I mean, they're obviously crawling in there and taking punches and delivering punches, so you have to give them credit for that. But it's just not my favorite. It's not. I don't watch it much. Very, very limited. I watch Mike Perry, who was actually in my gym boxing. So he's on. I'll take a look at him, but that's about it.
Well, I know a lot of people thought that Ronda Rousey in her bout with Amanda Nunes actually should have had more boxing skills. There was a lot of talk about, well, this was someone who came up through judo and just could not handle someone who had, the traditional skills. Did by any chance you have a chance to see the Rousey fight? It only lasted 48 seconds. I got to admit I saw the highlights, but 48 seconds is all the highlights there was of it. Do you have a chance to see any of the MMA bout that really capture the nation on Friday night?
I did see the highlights as you did, and I have to say I wasn't shocked because I had already said I really didn't think we would ever see Ronda Rousey in the octagon again, because she had such an inflated ego and so thought so positively of herself that there was no way that she was invincible. She's no way anyone could ever beat her. But I knew, I know Holly. I fought Holly Holmes, and I knew that it was a stylistic match.
Whoa! Did we break away? Did we lose Chrissy Martin? Did we lose a Tennessee pioneer here? Actually, she is a native West Virginian, but she fought out of Bristol in the old gym, which was, if you ever had a chance to go there, I covered one bout there, and what an arena it was! You're so close to the action. And such, and I think that we may have lost Chrissy Martin. I'm going to try to see if we're back. We're back here.
Yeah.
The dog biting you?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Anyway, no, I did want to ask though. Rousey was so much the star power, as you once were, of female combatant sports. Where do you think after her defeat, a lot of people saying, well, that's probably going to be it. I mean, Rousey should probably have a career as a celebrity outside of fighting. Is this something you really want to do? That sort of thought. Where do you think female combatant sports go from here, Christy Martin?
Yeah, actually, I think because, Ronda was such the star with the UFC. And I think this is going to be a setback because you have to have the entire package, and I'm not sure there's somebody coming along in her footsteps with the entire package. But again, I'm not a big fan of that sport, so I don't know all the combatants that are coming along.
Sure.
But in boxing, I know it kind of was the same thing. There was nobody to follow along in my footsteps to keep it going. Even though Layla Ali came out, Layla was just in it for. It was like a flash in the pan, and she went to the boxing gym. She honed her skills, but she still was living on the Ali name. So it was gone. I mean, women's boxing has, just recently, a few promoters have started to sign some women. Oscar De La Hoya signed, I cannot think of her name, but she's out of Texas, just a future former Olympian. So she may get some good opportunities, but it's going to just take some action. The girl from Ireland, Kathy Taylor is her name. She comes out to the ring with nothing but action. So she has a good chance, and Ireland's really behind her, the entire country. So, but here in the United States, we're just lagging behind. It's like women's boxing is one of the sports where no one really is opening up the doors, and it's tough. So it's hard for me to really. Women will come to me and ask me what should I do. My answer has to be, do boxing as fitness because it's a great sport. It's a lot of fun, but there's no money there. So it's hard for me to convince people that no, this should be your career because at this time there's nothing out there.
Well, you mentioned that people come to you now. Now, you live in Florida now. Is that correct?
I'm actually in the Carolinas right now.
Oh, I'm sorry. But previously you had lived there. Where do you live now?
Yes. I'm in Charlotte right now.
Okay. All right. So you're in the Charlotte area. Now, what are you doing now? You say people come to you to look to get a start. How are you still involved in combatant sports?
I'm in the gym all the time, and I've started my promotional company, Pink Promotions, and actually getting ready to do a promotion April 29th here in Charlotte. So just through staying involved, I'm going to fights, and I go to fights everywhere. I go to the fights in Vegas. I go, Deontay Wilder fought down in Alabama. I went and watched his fight. I'm at fights all the time. So people just text me, email me. I have this female fighter. Can you help her? And the problem is I can't. I mean, because there's no promoter that's willing to give anybody the opportunity that Don King gave me. And, love him or hate him, he's a great promoter, and, I was with him for about 10 years. So I learned a lot inside the ring and outside the ring during that 10-year time.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned Don King, because that was my next question. What was your relationship like with? First, let me ask you this: how did you get involved? How did you meet Don King for the first time?
I actually was training down in Florida, and a gentleman that trained fighters for King came in, saw me training, watched me spar, and he was like, "Wow, we have to get you King." And it was about the time that Mike Tyson was getting released from prison, so it was all great timing. And I went down, I shadowboxed a little bit for King. He did his famous laugh, and kind of the rest was history. We just signed a contract, and then I fought on some of the biggest cards in pay-per-view history at the time. I mean, of course, those records have been shattered by Floyd, but up until then, it was pretty exciting, fighting on the Tyson Holyfield cards and things like that.
Well, let me ask you, though, about that. As a woman, and you were fighting on the undercard, did you have any reservations of fighting on the undercard of a rapist?
I personally don't think that he's guilty of the rape.
Okay, no, a lot of people think that. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just had to go by how Mike Tyson treated me, and he was always very nice to me, treated me with much respect. At any point he could have told King, "I don't want her on my shows," and hey, Mike Tyson's rolling the train, so I would have been left off those shows. But he was a big supporter. He actually bought me a BMW back in 1996, and
interesting.
Yeah, we've been close since, so it's all good.
Okay, no, that's.
I'm a big Tyson fan. I like the knockout, so.
I will tell you, in about an hour, I'm going to have Sean Malooly, whose career started at the station many years ago. Christy Martin, he's a big boxing fan. His brother is a huge Tyson fan. I know the family pretty well, so there you go. We've been talking to Christy Martin and a little bit about the Ronda Rousey fight. She invented, to a large aspect, women's combatant sports, and right here in the Tri-Cities, out of Bristol and Johnson City. And it was kind of like I said, a last-minute thing we put together, but with the Rousey fight on Friday, I thought it was time to look at this again. Christy Martin, by the way, before I let you go, what are your next endeavors? What do you have on the table?
I actually a lot of things. 2017 is going to be a great year for me. I'm going to do this promotion coming up. I have a feature film that's getting ready to go into production, a book that I'm working with the writer now. So a lot of good things for Christy Martin coming up. 2017 is going to be a great year.
Chrissy, I hope we can stay in touch. I very much enjoyed. Thank you for coming on Tri-City Sports Now. And like I said, I definitely would like to keep in touch with you, especially as boxing events come about, to comment and the like, and as well as to promote what you're doing with your feature film. Can you tell us what it's going to be called?
Yeah, actually, I don't know all the details. I'm not supposed to share all the details yet. The press conference is coming out in February, so all of that will be public at that time, and I'll be happy to talk to you again, and we'll talk about the details at that time.
What's your book going to be called?
I'm still working on it because it just started with the writing. Yeah.
Can you tell me who the writer is?
George Diaz.
Okay.
He actually just wrote a Duran book, and that's been very successful. So.
All right.
And I've known George for a long time, so I'm having a lot of fun doing talking with him and visiting with him, just kind of rehashing the past.
In the 19th century, the pioneer was David Crockett. In the 20th century in East Tennessee, it was Christy Martin, because she pioneered women's combatant sports. Thanks for joining us here on Tri-City Sports Now. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit of football. The NFL schedules for next year are out. Who's going to go to the Super Bowl? I'll tell you all about that. Tri-City Sports Now.
When Meals on Wheels started.
Quick hello. Volunteer for Meals on Wheels by donating your lunch break at americaletsdolunch.org. This message brought to you by Meals on Wheels America and the Ad Council.
Tri-City Sports Now. I will get to the NFL schedules in the top of the next hour. Christy Martin, what do you think about that? And who else is going to ask about, okay, I mean, who else in this market would have the guts enough to ask, okay, Christy Martin appearing on a card with someone who has been convicted of rape. What are your opinions? And she answered it with an eloquence that the reputation of people around here do not have, and with an eloquence that for those short-sighted people who would brand us as perhaps less than uncouth, she had an eloquence that would knock them off guard as much as any of her punches. You know, she didn't beat Layla Ali and she didn't beat Mia St. John. I'll give you that. But you know Layla Ali. Why? Because of her name. You know Mia St. John. Why? Because of her sexuality. She was a Playboy model. You know Christy Martin because of her ability.